This anime is set in a world where magic is real. However, even though anyone can use magic, only kings or members of noble families are capable of mastering it perfectly. Because of this, commoners who attempt to use magic are mercilessly eradicated. One such commoner who was killed by the nobles is reincarnated as Lloyd, the seventh prince of the royal family ruling the kingdom of Saloum. Not long after his birth, Lloyd displays extraordinary magical abilities, able to cast a fireball strong enough to destroy the palace roof. A few years later, Lloyd grows into a cheerful child. However, due to his immense fascination with magic books, he often hides from the servants and avoids other activities. Because he is much younger than his older siblings, many people think Lloyd doesn't need to be treated specially. However, some believe he is the reincarnation of William Bold, a legendary figure revered by magicians. Although Lloyd didn't think too much about it, the only thing that caught his attention was the magic books in the palace. One day, as he was about to read a magic book, his caretaker named Silpa invited him to practice swordsmanship. During the training, Lloyd used magic to mimic Silpa's movements in order to match her strength. Lloyd also tried to cheat by using strengthening magic and levitation magic.
技術を真似できてもこの誤差のしわ寄せでいつも下ってその誤差をさらなるズルで埋める強化いえ誤差修正これなら対応できるぞそして合わせ鏡の戦いの中どうするトレース解除許せシルファ俺は早く本
It didn't take long for Silpa to notice Lloyd's cheating, but instead of getting angry, she praised his effort. When Silpa took Lloyd to the bathhouse, the servants mentioned that there was a demon sealed in the underground library. It was said that the demon had once brought the kingdom to the brink of destruction. The servants deliberately told this story to scare Lloyd, but instead of being frightened, Lloyd became curious and wanted to visit the place. That night, Lloyd sneaked into the underground library using magic. By manipulating the reflection of light, he successfully passed through the entrance unnoticed by the guards. According to one of the guards, it was impossible for any thief to breach the place's security since the entrance was protected with a seal cast by 10 great wizards. However, Lloyd effortlessly broke the seal. Upon entering the forbidden library, Lloyd immediately began reading the books stored there. But as he was engrossed in his reading, suddenly a demon sealed within one of the books appeared before him. The demon, Grimoire, commonly called Grim, asked Lloyd to break his seal in exchange for gold. However, Lloyd was not interested in gold. He planned to reapply the seal so Grim wouldn't destroy his dwelling. But when Grim offered him knowledge of ancient magic, without hesitation, Lloyd broke the seal. Instead of teaching magic, Grim attacked him brutally.
マジかよこいつ
なあだからほら
国戦法だ勉強になったがからどうするかな
Rather than panicking, Lloyd observed Grim's attack with great enthusiasm. He even wanted to feel the effect of the magic by touching it himself. After studying Grim's magic, Lloyd counterattacked with a fireball spell. With just one attack, he managed to make Grim surrender and pledge his loyalty to Lloyd. The next day, Albert, the second prince of the kingdom of Saloum, went to the library to meet his beloved younger brother, Lloyd. Afterward, they continued practicing magic shooting in an open area. During the practice, Albert received a lot of praise as each of his shots hit the target precisely. Meanwhile, Lloyd, trying not to appear as impressive as his older brother, deliberately veered his fireballs slightly off target. This action caused Albert's followers to comment that Lloyd's abilities were no match for his brother's. However, Albert, who already knew a bit about Lloyd's true abilities, chose not to say much and let his younger brother play as he pleased. After Albert left, Lloyd, who had plenty of free time alone, felt the urge to try many things. One of them was a dual incantation spell previously demonstrated by Grimm. At first, Grimm claimed that humans could never cast dual spells because it would require a second mouth. However, Lloyd managed to accomplish it by merging Grimm into his hand. Moreover, to cast hundreds of spells simultaneously, Lloyd attempted to use a technique called advanced dual magic. This feat was hard for Grimm to believe, as Lloyd managed to cast dual spells in a single utterance. However, the energy released was too immense to be directed at the ground, forcing him to aim it at the sky to minimize damage.
それも別の魔術同士をこれ心情じゃとてもじゃないか
Meanwhile, Albert's servant asked why Prince Albert was so interested in his younger brother. Albert simply replied that his brother would one day become a great wizard. However, when Albert's servant looked out the window, he was shocked to see the sky darkened as if it were night, caused by the magical energy explosion from Lloyd, which affected the Earth's atmosphere. The next day, Lloyd's experiment had already become sensational news throughout the kingdom. Yet instead of dwelling on the incident, Lloyd was more intrigued by reports of a dungeon conquest undertaken by adventurers. After reading the newspaper about adventurers, Lloyd was inspired to explore dungeons like them. To leave the palace, he created a clone using his magic and instructed Grimm to control it. However, even though he successfully escaped from the palace, Lloyd had no idea where the dungeons were located. Not long after, Lloyd saw a girl being chased by a group of monsters. The girl quickly defeated the monsters using a powerful martial art technique. Lloyd recalled reading about Kijutsu, a technique from a distant land that utilizes breathing to generate extraordinary strength. While Lloyd was observing her, the girl using Kijutsu noticed his presence. To keep his identity as a prince hidden, Lloyd quickly used transformation magic to change his appearance. With his new form, he introduced himself as Robert, a novice adventurer. Seeing Robert's appearance instantly mesmerized the girl. He introduced himself as Dao, an adventurer rank B. After years of training, Dao, who had become a skilled adventurer, began to yearn for romance. Shortly after they met, she decided she wanted Robert to be his boyfriend. Coincidentally, Robert was planning to explore a dungeon, and Dao decided to accompany him, hoping to get closer to him. When they reached the middle of the dungeon, they decided to take a short break. Albert used this opportunity to study Dao's Kijutsu technique. Dao was quite surprised to see Robert able to mimic the technique just by watching it. Delighted, Dao gladly offered to teach the technique to Robert. Meanwhile, Grimm, who was enjoying imitating Lloyd, was startled by the sudden appearance of Silpa, who had come to meet him. The scene shifted back to Robert and Dao, who were battling wolf monsters. Dao was fairly certain the dungeon boss had already been defeated. However, just as they were about to open the treasure chest, Robert quickly grabbed Dao and dodged a deadly attack that emerged from the chest. What followed was the appearance of a skeleton monster far more dangerous than the wolf monsters they had just faced. Dao, realizing the skeleton monster's identity, stated that it was a lich. When Robert asked what a lich was, Dao refused to answer and instead pushed him away. Without Robert's knowledge, Dao planned to buy time by confronting the lich so Robert could escape. However, since Dao didn't explain his reasoning, Robert decided to return to the scene. Along the way, he briefly asked Grimm for help, but it seemed Grimm was also facing his own difficulties. Meanwhile, Dao, struggling in his fight against the lich, began to feel overwhelmed. He realized he couldn't win and feared being killed by his enemy. To make matters worse, the lich kept taunting him, mocking his abilities. Even so, Dao resolved not to give up, recalling Robert's praise for his skills. Determined, he decided to fight with all his strength. Unfortunately, even after using his full power, the lich remained undefeated. Dao only managed to destroy its magical barrier but was left unable to move due to exhaustion. Fortunately, just before the Lich attacked Dao, Robert arrived to protect her. To defeat the Lich, Robert devised a strategy combining Kujutsu techniques with his magic power. As Robert moved swiftly from one spot to another, the Lich assumed he was trying to flee. In reality, Robert was preparing to unleash a powerful Kujutsu technique. After successfully regulating his breathing, Robert launched a counterattack. Although his moves seemed simple, his speed was so extraordinary that each slash of his Kujutsu surpassed the Lich's defenses. In the end, the dungeon boss was truly defeated, and they were finally able to claim the dungeon's treasure. However, Dao was disappointed to find that the treasure was nothing more than a small, rusty knife. Suddenly, the dungeon began to shake, but Robert, still curious about how the dungeon worked, decided to pull the treasure chest that was about to disappear into the ground. Afterward, they returned to the surface safely. Before parting ways, Dao explained that Robert had used the secret chi blade technique and expressed hope that they could go on another adventure together someday. After returning from the palace, Lloyd found Grim in a weak and battered condition. It seemed Silpa had been training him hard without giving him any rest. The next day, when Lloyd examined the items brought from the dungeon, almost everything had turned to junk. The only things left were the treasure chest and the broken knife. Lloyd considered both as valuable treasures, as with these items, he could conduct experiments to discover the hidden magic within them. After converting the knife into a magic liquid, Lloyd confirmed that the knife contained enhancement magic. He then analyzed the liquid to identify its components. Once he successfully identified the ingredients, Lloyd quickly gathered everything needed to recreate the magic. In addition to researching magic, Lloyd also took sword training with Silpa. The training made Silpa happy, as Lloyd's swordsmanship had declined in the past few days. After the training, Lloyd continued his magic experiments by mixing silver oil and magic powder. He was only a few steps away from creating the perfect magic liquid. Lloyd's goal was to create a magical mechanism to enhance weapons, so he needed many weapons for his experiments. Coincidentally, Albert had many guards, so Lloyd asked them to provide their swords, although they were initially hesitant. After that, Lloyd began modifying the swords. Out of 120 swords, only 70 were successfully infused with enhancement magic. However, this was a significant achievement, according to Albert. Even a magic expert wouldn't be able to enhance that many weapons. Lloyd, eager to see the results of the weapon enhancement magic, told his brother that they would be going hunting the next day, and this would be the perfect opportunity to prove it. The next day, Lloyd and his group, along with his older brother, set out to hunt monsters. During the journey, Albert teased Silpa, who seemed very close to Lloyd, even though Silpa was Lloyd's mentor. Albert assumed that Silpa had special feelings for him. Albert's comments made Silpa look annoyed, and just as she was about to draw her sword, a horde of monsters suddenly appeared, blocking their path. Using the Kijutsu breathing technique, Lloyd had already detected their presence earlier, but he chose to remain silent and pretended not to notice anything. When the group began to advance to fight the monsters, they defeated them one by one with ease. It seemed that the strengthening spell Lloyd had applied to their swords had successfully made them much sharper than before. In fact, the group members themselves appeared startled, as they weren't used to the newfound sharpness of their weapons. When a monster leapt into the carriage, Dao suddenly appeared and kicked the monster away. After saving Lloyd, Dao immediately introduced himself and declared his readiness to assist the group. Aside from coming to help, Dao was also curious about Lloyd because he used the same chi jutsu technique as Robert. That night, Lloyd felt embarrassed after accidentally bumping into Silpa, who was changing clothes. The situation inside the tent became even more awkward when Silpa pinned him down to stop him from leaving. Dao, witnessing the scene, mocked Silpa by calling her a perverted servant. Offended by Dao's remark, Silpa confronted him, and a heated argument broke out between the two. Not long after, a monster appeared at the campsite. The troops were quickly deployed to handle the threat. However, because the monster was too powerful, Dao decided to join the fight. Meanwhile, Silpa kept her distance to protect Lloyd and ensure his safety. Albert unleashed a magical attack, enhanced by the effects of a strengthened sword. As a result, he managed to cast an extremely powerful spell that took down the monster in a single strike. However, not long after being defeated, the monster suddenly revived, and even more of them began to appear. This was revealed to be the work of a demon controlling the monsters. The demon, known as Pajoju, hid within the body of the monsters. Pazuzu possesses the ability to control monsters while also channeling mana to heal them. As a result, no matter how many troops attack, the monsters regenerate quickly. When Grimm revealed this information, Lloyd became intrigued and decided to learn how to channel mana. Instead of worrying about the ongoing battle, Lloyd remained focused on studying magic within the tent. Seeing humans struggle, Pazuzu grew arrogant and began mocking them to provoke Silpa. He even referred to Lloyd as a useless crybaby. Unwilling to tolerate the insult, Silpa decided to confront Pazuzu. Calmly, she approached the monsters under Pazuzu's control and swiftly sliced them apart with precise strikes. Thanks to her actions, Silpa managed to expel Pazuzu from the monster he was controlling. After Pazuzu was forced out of the wolf bear's body, Silpa assumed the demon no longer had the strength to fight back. She then threatened Pazuzu to surrender immediately. However, even though all the monsters had been defeated, Pazuzu still had a way to retaliate. By spreading poison in the surroundings, he could incapacitate anyone who inhaled it. As a result, Silpa suddenly found herself unable to move and unable to avoid the attack. Thanks to her breathing technique, Tao was not affected by the poison, allowing her to still move and protect Siapa, who was on the verge of collapse. Unfortunately, her martial arts skills were not strong enough to fight Pazuzu. To break free from the demon's grasp, Tao was forced to use her ultimate technique, which left her struggling to move when facing a monster's grip. Subsequently, Pazuzu released a stronger poison with the intent of turning Tao and Siapa into his minions. Meanwhile, at the same time, Lloyd was playing in the water. Realizing someone could move freely amidst his poison, Pazuzu quickly took action and ordered all the monsters to attack. However, Lloyd used this opportunity to experiment with a new magic he had learned. By channeling mana in a specific way, he successfully freed the monsters from Pazuzu's control. This made the monsters no longer a threat, enraging Pazuzu. In response to Lloyd's interference, Pazuzu tried to intimidate him by releasing an overwhelming amount of mana. However, nothing Pazuzu did affected Lloyd. Instead, Due to Lloydo's immense mana reserves, it was Pazuzu who felt intimidated. Coincidentally, Lloydo had a spell he wanted to test on Pazuzu. To activate the spell, he needed to trap Pazuzu within a barrier. Realizing this, Pazuzu tried desperately to escape, but no matter how hard he struggled, the barrier created by Lloydo still managed to catch him. Lloydo also combined himself with Grim, greatly increasing his spellcasting speed. When Lloydo cast his dimensional sealing magic, Pazuzu was completely trapped, unable to escape and left writhing while begging for mercy. As the demon remained inside the barrier, Lloydo unleashed a magic attack consisting of 4 elements. Initially, he planned to keep attacking for 30 minutes, but before even 5 minutes had passed, Pazuzu was already showing signs of nearing death. Simultaneously, those affected by the poison began regaining consciousness. Lloydo then explained to them that it was a sorcerer named Robert who had defeated the demon and saved them. After the incident, Albert and Lloydo returned to the palace to meet the king. During that occasion, Albert suggested that his younger brother should also be given the right to compete for the throne. However, since Lloydo had never been interested in such a position, he firmly rejected the idea and continued with his activities as if nothing had happened. After returning from the hunt, Lloydo found a wolf bear that wanted to follow him home. Because of this, Lloydo decided to keep it and named it Zero.